First game this week is arguably, of course, the biggest game of the week, and that is Michigan going to Penn State. The stakes are obviously incredibly high for both teams. For Michigan, a chance to kind of stake their case to be the number one team in the rankings. They haven't been tested this season, a pretty easy schedule so far. On the other side, I think for Penn State, I think it is a chance to sort of make their own statement, if you will, because of what happened at Ohio State. They beat, the score was only an 8-point game or whatever, but it was a pretty convincing win, a controlled win by Ohio State. So a chance for Penn State to sort of make a statement here against Michigan, a chance for Penn State to get in the Big Ten title mix as well. So a lot at stake here, obviously, for both teams in this Big Ten showdown.
What do we not know about Michigan? Like, we know the schedule has been weak. We know J.J. McCarthy is significantly improved. We sort of have a pretty good feel of what Penn State is, what their strengths and weaknesses are. We know how good they are on the line of scrimmage. The quarterback has been very efficient, but the explosive plays aren't there. They need to utilize some of their playmakers a little bit more, but largely a pretty damn good football team. What is it we don't know about Michigan yet?
I think one question that I would like to see answered is the line of scrimmage, because Michigan's offensive line had some new faces come in during the offseason, and they have been good, but there is a little bit of statistical regression in the run game so far. They haven't needed it though to win any of these games. So I think against a very, very good Penn State defensive front, whether it's stopping the run, whether it's getting to the quarterback, Penn State could have Chop Robinson back, one of their top defensive ends. I want to see how Michigan's offensive line holds up here. Also want to see Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards there's been, like I said, some small statistical regression in the run game this year. Hasn't mattered because of the schedule, but this is a chance on the road for sort of their offensive line and run game to answer any kind of questions. And for Penn State, if they can meet this challenge, they got a chance to make this one very interesting.
To me, I still think and this may be reductive of me, so I apologize, but I still don't know what J.J. McCarthy is when pressed into being the guy. He was very good against TCU in the second half, when in that playoff game where all of a sudden they got into a shootout and they had to make plays, right? Like he played pretty well. Has he been asked to lead Michigan from behind? I mean, this is the question we were asking Georgia all summer. Like, we know they're pretty good. We know the roster's pretty good, but what happens if Georgia gets into a situation where they're down by 7 on the road in a tough situation? Is Carson Beck any good? Well, he's already answered all those questions in the way he's played. I think JJ has earned a lot of leeway with this question because he's won a ton of games and he's been extremely efficient this season. He's made a lot of really impressive throws, but this will be the best secondary he's played the entire year. This will be the most hostile environment they've played in all year. It'll probably be the best pass rush they've played all year. I like maybe the best defensive coordinator they've played against all season. Like this is such it's very unusual to be this deep into the season and to look at a team that we know is very good in Michigan and still go like, well, but what are they in this type of situation? They have not been challenged or tested in any of these different situations yet.
Yeah, it feels like a prove it game for both teams to some extent, because of the fact that Michigan has had such an easy start, an easy schedule to the season. And like I said, for Penn State, there is an element of you lost to Ohio State, didn't play very well offensively. This game against Michigan is at home. It's sort of a chance to rebound and sort of stake your case that, hey, you are going to be a factor in this Big Ten East title discussion. I also think there is a little bit of prove it too for both quarterbacks. Like you mentioned, I mean, McCarthy, I think you look at his numbers from last season to this season. I do think there is overall an uptick in play and development. For Drew Aller, I think we have seen maybe some signs of growth the last 2 weeks. He did throw an interception against Indiana, but 25 of 34 for 240 yards and 4 touchdowns against Maryland. I also thought that Dante Cephas, the Kent State transfer, got more involved last week, and that could be a good thing for Penn State. We talk about their loss to Ohio State. They didn't have any guys making plays. Well, this is a chance for Cephas or Keandre Lambert-Smith. Somebody's going to have to make plays here, because when you look at the defensive numbers for these two teams, I mean, they're number 1 and 2 in the country in defensive success rate. And, Penn State's at the top when it comes to defending the pass. So it's a great matchup for McCarthy to sort of prove it. He's right at the top of the Heisman odds as one of the favorites. You look at Aller, it's a chance for him to sort of make his statement after that game against Ohio State. So a lot of intrigue to me in teams and quarterbacks here and sort of a prove it type of game.
Coaching implications. You've got James Franklin, who has to show up in one of these games at some point and has had some moments at the end of games before that Penn State fans will complain about. And then, of course, Harbaugh, all the stuff we just talked about on the show. I am tempted to go Michigan and lay the points. And I picked Penn State to win this game all summer. In our preseason Big Ten pod, I said I think Penn State's going to make the playoff because I think they're going to win this game. Now that it's here and I've seen them play up to this point, I still think you can make a case for Penn State to win the game outright. You just did a good job explaining. There's still a lot of question marks about what Michigan eventually could be at the end of the year. They could be a team good enough to win the entire national championship. They could also be a team that's played no ranked teams. And I don't use that as an end all be all. I just, I hate that term. Like, oh, they have no top 25 wins. Like, that doesn't mean they're not great, but they have not been tested. They have not been challenged by anybody. And so I am utterly fascinated with this situation because Michigan, the last time they were in this situation, overlooked their opponent and got beat. That's not going to happen this weekend.
I also think the spread in this game is pretty interesting. I thought it would open up a little bit higher. And the fact it's hovered kind of around 3 or 5, I thought it might be a little bit closer to a touchdown, just kind of based upon how Michigan has played this year. So the spread jumped out to me from the beginning, but also like I mentioned in some of these numbers so far that for Michigan this season, averaging 4.4 yards per carry in Big Ten games, that's down from 5.6 last year. The margins here too for both teams, a red zone defense, they're first and second in the Big Ten, and it's sort of red zone touchdown percentage. You also have both teams at the top in third down defense. So I think it is a case of, can Michigan offensive line and Blake Corum, this is their toughest test of the year. Penn State's going to have to try and stay on schedule. There's going to have to be a big play or two. And the same thing could be said if you're Michigan. If you're not able to get the run game going with Corum and against this defensive front, this is the game where McCarthy, Roman Wilson's been great this year. You get Colston Loveland at tight end. There's a lot of weapons there for Michigan. So I'm going to be curious to see which team is in third and long, and then which team is converting those third downs, which team can maybe get a turnover, red zone stop, sack, something like that. Havoc plays are going to be pretty important here. Michigan's won 3 out of 5 against Penn State. The last 2, of course, in Penn State were decided by 1 score.
If I'm a Penn State fan, I'm pretty pissed off at Fox.
Yeah,
because this would be a much tougher task for Michigan at 7:00 kickoff. Night game, Happy Valley, Beaver Stadium would be absolutely insane. Still will be absolutely insane. But that noon kickoff, student sections are always a little bit more hungover.
Yeah, I think if this was the night game at Penn State with the whiteout,
oh my God,
I think maybe the conversation around an upset might be a little bit higher here, but certainly not. I mean, this is the best. Like I said, it's the best test of the season for Michigan going on the road to Happy Valley.
It feels like there's a chance that if Michigan wins this game, that Penn State is just still in that not quite there yet mold. In particular, things not lining up. The line of scrimmage is there for both sides, but maybe the quarterback and the supporting cast is just not quite there yet. National championship caliber. I thought that was going to be the case this year. The other side of that is Michigan as good as its margin of victory and dominance and sort of game control, whatever stupid phrase you want to use. Are they that good? Or are they again, also, is it distraction versus motivation? How does the human element affect that Michigan locker room? Hostile environment, physical. Once you get pressed, how do they respond? And generally they respond pretty well. They've done under Harbaugh the last 5 seasons or whatever, they've done a pretty good job in this. I truly have no idea. My instinct is that Michigan is pissed off for greatness, that the early kickoff gives them just a little bit of an easier time, and that JJ McCarthy makes a few more big plays that Drew Aller does not make, and that Michigan wins and covers the 4.5. That's my instinct, but I have no real strong feeling about this one. So
I am staying away from the spread, but I like Michigan to win on the road. I think I think McCarthy, to your point, I think both defenses are going to land their share of punches in this game. And it may look a lot like Ohio State, Penn State a few weeks ago where it's low scoring, but I think McCarthy, if you got one quarterback, one offense got to make a play in the second half or two, I'd like McCarthy to do so.
Yep. I'll be going big game hunting this week, but we'll get to our picks against the spread coming up.